Hello, Shreyoshi? Hello.
We are
Yes,
good to go.
You can start.
We are good to go now.
start कर दूं ना?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sure.
My camera is on.
Yeah, everything's right. We are live now.
Good evening to my listeners, my loving juniors, and my fellow batchmates. I am Sushi and today we are here with the chapter 2 of Stroke of Insight. Data science, AI, machine learning are the buzzwords that we have all heard of. The impact they can create on business and on people is beyond limit. Today, we have among us someone who envisions to change the world with the help of data. On behalf of Jadavpur University Science Club, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our very own alumni, Rajit Bhattacharya, who is the CEO of Data Sutram. He is also recognized on the top 15 entrepreneurs from District India by YouTube listeners. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Sushi. Glad to be a part of your event.
Thank you, sir. How are you in this pandemic?
I think the pandemic, has brought in a lot of troubled and challenging times for all of us. But I think, together we are fighting it, and together we are bracing ourselves for the change that is coming to the way human mankind has progressed. So it is challenging, it is exciting, at the same time, it is, troubling.
Thank you, sir. We would like to know how was the transition from engineering to entrepreneurship?
So, I didn't start entrepreneurship with the idea of becoming an entrepreneur or, with the idea of wanting to open a startup. I joined engineering just like anyone else, and one of the reasons I joined engineering was because I didn't know what to do else. And, after a joint entrance examination, the next immediate step was the JEE and then the WJ in Jadavpur. But what happened during those engineering days is that, I kind of, I would say I kind of had a lot of free time because I used to hardly, go to classes. I had very less attendance. I used to just go for labs and stuff like that. And as a result, I had a lot of free time that I could invest into, clubs, societies, a lot of activities here and there. So I had a lot of extracurriculars. Now, with those extracurriculars, what happened is that I came across a lot of people whom I interacted with, I learned from, and also a lot of internships in fields which I learned from. Now, in course of time, in that learning, what was interesting is that I actually found a problem that was a real life problem that existed in a society. And, when I got a problem, I think one of the things that is rooted for every engineer almost is we're all looking for problem solvers, right? If you've done your engineering exams, you're into engineering, one thing you know how to do is to solve problems. So when you face a problem and you want to really solve it, the next step is entrepreneurship. So I don't think engineering and entrepreneurship are very different. Entrepreneurship is something that follows as a result of engineering because it's the art of problem solving. So I feel even though entrepreneurship is not something we learned during our engineering days, but I think the entire knack of solving problems, facing situations, and I would say what we learned very important in engineering is jugaad. That becomes very handy as an entrepreneur in your early days. So I think there's a lot of key and common learnings, but overall it was a smooth process. And I think my start to the journey of entrepreneurship was primarily from the fact that I found a real life problem that I really wanted to solve, and we moved towards the solution. That's it.
Thank you, sir. But whether was your family very much in favor of you pursuing entrepreneurship and not some IT job?
So, my parents come from a entrepreneurial background. So I would say that comparatively, I faced less chance. Although it was a very different field, that into a social sector, things are very different. But although I still faced some bit of less. But what happened is three of us started this company, me, Ankit, and Aishik. What happened is that, I come from Jadavpur Electronics, and we all know that electronics has a significant amount of placement that goes on. And as a result, what happened is when your batchmates are going for jobs, which are steady jobs, parents parents do tend to think that, hey, what is my son doing? And I think the greatest concern that I had to face and the greatest answer that I had to give to my parents was I doing this just because of significant amount of style or fad or fashion? Did I actually want to become an entrepreneur, or was I just becoming it because of a tendency for the generation to become an entrepreneur? Because what happens then is that you're just doing something because everyone else is doing, and then you often follow. But if you're actually doing something because there's a problem that you're solving, again, I'm going to focus on that, then I think it is. So yes, even in fact, when we were raising our second round of funding, one of my co-founders' fathers was pressuring him for MBA. So those things happen, and I think that is to be happened. But I think what happened is when our parents saw that we were getting recognition in terms of what we were doing, and when we were not wasting our time and we were actually getting fruitful results, that's when they started giving. But I think the first 15-12 months was tough, was challenging, was a lot of fights with parents. Yeah.
So like the things are very similar in this what to say, this middle class Indian family. Like everyone wishes to get into a 9 to 5 job and not into a startup just because there is a risk factor. So like what would be your advice for someone from the core engineering who wants to get into the field of data science and AI and machine learning?
I feel AI, data science, ML, and I have a very strong opinion in this. Is they are buzzwords, and I get a lot of applications even from Jadavpur, even from Shibpur on internships on these fields. What I tend to see across is that it's grossly misunderstood. You don't what you need to do as an engineering student is nobody expects you to know ML top notch. Nobody expects you to know the integrities of ML or the integrities of coding. What is very important is to get your bases covered. Are you good in maths? Are you good in probability? Do you understand probability and statistics better? Do you have a good base of coding? I think if the base is covered right, then those added layers of ML and AI can come in. So to anyone who is interested in the space, what I would say is this space is very new. And I would say don't get brainwashed by the thousands of hundreds of courses on data science that exist in the internet. Rather, stick to your focus on maths, stick to your focus on stats. I've never taken a data science course, ever. So, and none of my co-founders did. So I would say stick to your focus on maths, stick to your focus on coding, stick to your focus on stats, probability, basic things. And when you encounter an ML problem, you can solve it. So I would say take an exploratory route to ML rather than a predefined syllabus route, because it's a very new field and the syllabus hardly knows what real life work is. So your theoretical data sets are very different from your practical data sets. So I would always recommend take an exploratory route to ML, and the best way to learn ML is by working in ML. So go and work in ML, take up internship projects, do your research project with your professors. That's how you learn ML.
Thank you, sir. Your words were truly insightful. We have a question by Vibhor Goswami. He is saying that what are the career options for an EE student in robotics, machine learning, or artificial intelligence?
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Like we have a question from Vibhor Goswami saying that what are the career options for an EE student in robotics, machine learning, or artificial intelligence?
What are the
career options?
Career options. Okay. So I think these fields are something that are coming up very much. And if you think of it, the entire automation that is happening today, especially in robotics and ML, it's a lot. But at the same time, I'll be very true. I'll be very honest about something. That is, you won't get jobs right after college in these fields unless and until you're looking at startups. Because the R&D labs that are there in the country in these fields usually go for masters and PhD intake. So for a student to get out of engineering and get into that field, it's not that easy, and it's not going to be an easy path. But I feel in a longer run, the career options are huge, because this is something that is eventually going to come up in the country. And the challenge here is, how do I implement these fields in a country like India? That's the challenge, because we are a very human labor intensive country, and we cannot have an replication of an automated process, because that's going to be resulting in a loss of jobs for people. So the challenge here is that if you're looking at a career option in ML, AI, robotics, there are two things you should do. One, you should start working with startups. And I keep emphasizing this because I don't see that culture in Jadavpur primarily. I work with a lot of students from Jadavpur, but I'm not talking about just DataSutra. You should go out to Bangalore, work with startups instead of working for MNCs. That's going to give you real life, because startups are the real people who are working in these fields rather than the MNCs. The MNCs are wasting their time. On the second part, if you want to do a long-term career plan, if your target is those R&D labs, then those offices are not in India. The Samsung or the MNC R&D labs were actually in this field are primarily doing the research outside, and then your career option after Jadavpur should be a master's in abroad to go in that route.
Thank you, sir. It was really very informative. We have another question from, he says that how can I start a startup on space science like SpaceX? Is it possible in India to make a private space research company?
So who is this person who asked this question? Can I know the name?
Shovik Noshkar from IT department.
So Shovik, might take that to you is that, when Elon Musk was starting SpaceX, nobody in America believed that there was going to be a private space research company coming out of US. So, me telling you anything right now on this topic should not stop you from opening a SpaceX competitor company in India. Okay, that's my first disclaimer. Second, I think there's a lot of interesting startups in rockets and SpaceX space journeys, especially rockets which are of lightweight, which can easily go. There's a lot of work going on in this research field. So you should look up aerospace startups that are there and seeing what kind of work there is. There's definitely a lot of money being invested into this field. And with SpaceX doing such beautiful work with NASA in the US, there's definitely an opportunity for these companies to go on with ISRO, especially now that ISRO is also launching a lot of their IC navigation fields and a lot of things on this front. So I feel totally good opportunity, go ahead, but do your research well on what's the situation in India like before you take a call.
Thank you, sir. We would like to know how should one pitch to the investors, so as to convince them our idea will be good in the longer run.
Right. I think that's a wonderful question, Sushi, and I'll tell you why. Because I raised my first venture capital when I was 21, and eventually moved on to raise my second venture capital at 22 close. So what's the situation in this venture capital, and what I learned is that before I raised my first venture capital, I spent 2 years getting rejected by a lot of investors, and I think that taught me a lot of things. What did it teach me is very important, and I would like to pass it on to the fellow entrepreneurs who are going to raise investments in the next few rounds. I personally want a lot of investments coming into JU, especially JU startups. I feel the first thing that we do is when we talk to an investor, passion is important, but we are too married with the product. We need to give an investor is not someone who understands very deep what you're doing. They don't need to know the integrities of the tech you're building.
Profit.
Right. What they need to know is they need to know the impact of the tech you're building. So I'm in JU Science Club, so I'm probably talking to a lot of tech people. So I would say, don't get married to the tech. Get married to the impact your tech is going to create. Don't think you've created a product till you have a customer. Because a product, a tech you're creating is only a product when you have a customer. Before that, it's just a tech. It's just a piece of code that has been written by you. When it has a customer, when someone's paying for it, that's when. So when your investor is basically giving you money so that he can get a return at the end of 5 years or 10 years, right? Investors are looking to invest into the future. Now, what they do, they need to know. If I am an investor and if I'm investing in something, or let's say, Shreyoshi, you're an investor and you're investing into an idea that I'm building, you would want to know two things. One is that whatever I'm building is something that can give back your money, right? So when you're talking to an investor, you need to give examples of how this same space has been profitable for investors in international market. So you need to do a research in terms of how investments are flowing into the area that you're building your product in, which you need to talk to your investor about. Your investor wants to know how good you're in business, because you're probably already good in tech. So your investor needs to know the market size. Your investor needs to go why you are doing it. The passion is important. The impact is important. Again, I'm emphasizing on impact. So I think 3-4, when you're creating an investor deck or investor, whatever, a pitch, you should always think of 3 things: why you're doing it, what's the impact, and what's the market of it. If you can answer these 3 things, any investor is going to give you money.
Thank you, sir. It was really informative. We would also want to know, what is whether AI and machine learning will affect the job opportunities in core sector.
That's something that I am not qualified to answer in. I mean, honestly, but I think if you ask my perspective, I would say that definitely an impact is going to come in. More importantly, because I can only talk from an area I'm looking at. There is a lot of automations that are happening currently. A lot of the jobs are, checks and balances and processes in the sector, which are all going to be automated driven and sensor driven and IoT driven. So it's probably going to lead to jobs. But I don't think it's in a large scale it's going to lead to a job loss, because the jobs that are currently in are probably going to be going, but there will be new jobs that are getting to be created. So as automation is going to come in, you need people to actually program those automations, actually find those solutions. So I don't think on an overall scale the jobs will be impacted, but from the temporary perspective there will be a drop, and then the rise will come in.
Thank you, sir. We have another question, what are the opportunities in Masters of AI, ML and Data Science after BE from Electrical? This question has been asked by Soumya Bashuri.
So again, probably not the right person to ask this question. I've never done a master's in AI, but if I answer as a senior, I've seen my friends do it. What I've realized is electrical is considered the mother department. From electrical, IT, electronics, computer science have all branched out. So why not AI from electrical? And I mean, you probably have those electives and all there, and it doesn't really matter. As I said, if you're going to do a master's or a job, what's important is how good your maths, coding, and stats is. It doesn't matter if you have anything AI related in it. My co-founder is from chemical, and he's our lead data scientist in the company. So electrical is more close to data AI than chemical is. So I don't see any problem there.
Thank you, sir. Whether you can you please explain about DataSutra and the product that DataSutra is selling?
Sure. So DataSutra, the entire idea started from two projects that we were working in. During my college time, I was part of an internship, and why I'm going to start from there is, again, I'm going to start from why I started this company and why I started building this product. During my third year, I think I did two internships, which are very important for me. One, I was working on a satellite project with the government of West Bengal, where I was working on satellite data, how satellite data was being used to predict what crops were going to be possibly grown in an area. And with that knowledge, we were actually helping the government understand that what kind of incentives should I give out to the farmers in terms of fertilizers to actually help them grow those crops there. So what I realized is external data, satellite, something external to an organization, was so fundamental in making a decision that was so internal to the organization. The second project that I worked on was, again, something that again gave us this idea was, I was working with one of the largest retailers in the country, Future Group, and they had opened a stores called Easy Day stores in Delhi. Back then, Kishore Biyani had opened up a hackathon saying that, I invite students and startups from all across the country to come and solve a problem where 6 of their stores had opened in Delhi and had shut down. We had participated there, and, as students, as I was doing an internship with a firm, and I went there with the firm, and we cracked the solution. We actually helped them understand why their sales were underperforming. And the way we did it is we looked at demographics near each of the stores, and we found a correlation with how the demographics were related to the sales of the stores there, thereby saying that not enough sufficient market research was done into planning why the stores existed in the first place. Again, external data, external to an organization, was so fundamental in the internal decision making. So with this, what we did is DataSutra started. And the idea of DataSutra is location intelligence. What does that mean? That means that location, which is such a fundamental part of our everyday life. As people, as businesses, we take decisions on, starting from what kind of medicines should be available to what kind of products should be available to whether there should be a petrol pump or a charging station or what facility in a location. And in a country like India or even in Southeast Asia, decisions are primarily being taken on a qualitative approach. That is, I physically visit the place, I look around, I try to gauge who stays there. We work with some of the top multinationals in India, and even till date, before us, they used to follow a manual process of deciding on a location. Where we came in is we married multiple sources of data, and we gave them a SaaS product, software as a service, where using our dashboard, they could readily look at any location and take a decision on the profitability of the location. And that's how we have turned a qualitative judgment of a location into a quantitative aspect, where we have put numbers into what would be guesstimates before. So we have actually converted the process. So we are building a sector agnostic product, where for India, for every granular, for every 100 cross 100 meter tile in India, we are carrying out, finding out the spending capacity, population density, footfall of what's happening there. And with this data, we are working with EV companies on where to open charging stations. We are working with retail on where to open stores. We are working with pharma companies on what kind of medicine should be sold where. We are working with life insurance companies on what kind of, where the market opportunity. So we are working across sector, but married to a fundamental part location. And our entire product is focused on how can I give the best data for the location at a granular level through our dashboard.
Thank you, sir. It was really enlightening to know about DataSutra and about this location thing. We have another question. Naman Jalal is asking, do you think that partnering with someone from the business background will help you in the startups, as you mentioned in raising a capital?
I'll say yes and a no. Why I'll say yes, I'll start off with that, is often as engineers, we don't see, we don't have that kind of business knowledge. So if you have a friend from, BCom or, or I don't know, any kind of the eco background, or where they know the numerics more better than you, or have a stuff, or even has a business family background, that's also very important. You understand the economics of it. So if you are concentrating on a product and you have a partner who can look at the business front, nothing like it. That's a very good strategy to move forward with. Why I'll say a no is, in our case, all three of us were engineers. We didn't have anyone from business background. So it's not compulsory to have a person from the business background, but even within us, we had split roles. So when you're starting up, each one of you have to do everything and you have to learn it. So even if you're not from a business background, it's possible to actually learn the crux of it. See, and if you're actually partnering with someone who knows business well, then you'll probably lose out on the company because that's going to be his company. Remember, whoever is leading business owns the company. And I think I'll start with the example of Steve Jobs and Wozniak to say, we all remember Jobs, but how many of us remember Wozniak? So, necessarily, being the tech person you are, you shouldn't just give up on something just to partner with a business background. But if you feel that you have a friend or you know someone who's going to come on board equally invested into it, not looking to take advantage, and at the same time having a business background, then go for it. That's my take on it.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from Deepta Roy saying that I am from mathematics honors department. If I want to be a software developer, then how should I proceed? Should I repeat it once?
No, I heard it. So I mean, you can be from maths, you can be from English, you can be from eco. How does it matter? To know coding, just open a language. Today, all the resources are on the internet. Just learn it up. And if you're from a maths background, take it as a challenge to understand coding in form of maths. So you can actually have. So if you're from maths, you have probably got a good knowledge of probability, and you're already one step into data science. Learn Python, learn R. Those are the things that are fundamental to data science. And once you know that base of, treat coding. Coding today has become a language that everyone from any field should know. It's not very particular to any engineering or any stream. It's become a language through which you communicate. It's as important as English, you should know coding. So even if you're from maths background, just open your internet and learn coding. It's pretty easy. And I think JU Science Club should start a coding session. They had, in my time, there used to be coding sessions, right?
Yeah, sure. So there is another question. Suppose one want to start an e-commerce platform. When one will approach to the seller, they will need buyer. But without seller, they cannot get buyers. Then how it can be started? And this has been asked by Tonma Shorkar.
So Tonma, that's the crux of life. Did the chicken come first or did the egg come first? That's the chicken. That's the famous chicken and the egg puzzle. That the chicken came first or the egg came first. So there was a story where I forgot the exact story, but there used to be this one guy who wanted to become the CEO of World Bank and also wanted to marry the Bill Gates' daughter. So he went to Bill Gates and said, "Hey, that I'm going to be the CEO of the World Bank," and went to World Bank CEO and said, MD, and said, "Appoint me the CEO because I'm going to marry Bill Gates' daughter." And then both of the things clicked. So supply and demand are something that has to be going hand in hand. And like any other business, that's the crux of it. So you have to pretend to your deal. There's a famous say word, "Fake it till you make it," and it's is as true as that. When you're looking to a suppliers, even your suppliers know that you're going to probably start a new business, but you need to give them that confidence that, hey, I'm going to get you those buyers, I'm going to get you those buyers. And when you go to those buyers, you should go and say that, hey, I'm going to get you those sellers, and then you would join the dot. If you join the dot, you're a successful entrepreneur. If you don't, you have learned a lesson. That's how you should take life.
That is basically all you need to have faith in your product. Like, yes, it will work and make people believe that.
That's more important. You should have faith in your product, but more importantly, you should have the conviction to make people actually believe in you.
Thank you, sir. So there's another question from Oyun Bishash. He is asking what you have built is not new and any big tech company can copy you. So how will you survive with this? We have faced this a lot of times while pitching at hackathons.
So I would say why I am not, what I've built is not new, and then I'll move on to answer that question. Um what we are doing is we are working with multiple sources of data. What we've created as a marketplace where today any company can come in and sell their data and earn money through it. So we have created data monetization channel. And what's more important is the entire blending of the data that happens. We blend multiple sources of data together to create our own indexes, and that's where our entire IP lies. And so this entire IP is where we have patented our models, our algorithms, our statistical models, and that's where we are far ahead. So we have spent 1.5, 2 years in R&D building those models and protecting and patenting them so that we protect what we are creating as indexes, which are determining the accuracy of the data that we are creating. So that's why that's why how we are safeguarding what we have built, and that's why we are different from the competitors. There's a lot of companies, MNCs, that can go ahead and work with external data, but they will not invest their time into building location granular data because we are already ahead of the race. So why will they invest money into it? They would rather pay us to get that in. So that's one crux of it. Second, let me be brutally honest with you, and let me tell you that nothing in the world that you build is new. And if you're building something that nobody has built, then you should ask yourself, is this the right thing? Because is this really needed? So when you're building a SpaceX out of India, like I forgot someone was mentioning, and that's not new. There is a SpaceX in US, but there's no SpaceX in India, right? So the market, how you're doing it, economics, business model, sales, everything is innovation. The tech is not the only innovation that you have. And exactly what we engineers have to also understand when we enter entrepreneurship is that the way how you do it is also has to be as innovative as what you do it. And how you do it can often become a perfect example. Before Facebook came in, there was MySpace. Before Facebook came in, there were a lot of social media companies. Before Amazon came in, during the dot-com bubble, before Amazon, there was a lot of companies doing exactly what Amazon was doing. None of them survived. Amazon did after the dot-com crash. If you look at Uber, before Uber, there was companies who were doing exactly that. The Taxi First Share was one of the companies who had started what Ola was doing far ahead. But then Ola actually purchased Taxi First Share. So, whatever you're going to do, someone has to do it before. Otherwise, there's no point of it. You have to think, how are you going to be different? And that's exactly why it's very important in hackathons or in investors summits, because you have to actually convince someone. They are not looking for an answer. Remember, the person you're talking to is not looking for an answer that you are going to be the most innovative. What they're looking for is, hey, do you have the conviction in yourself that you're going to guard what you're building against competition, and what's your plan for it? Nobody's expecting you to invent. Entrepreneurship is not invention. Entrepreneurship is more discovery. That's how I'm going to end it.
Thank you, sir. The same person is again asking, like, how can you tackle questions easily while pitching?
Sorry, how can you?
Tackle questions easily while pitching.
So, whenever you're pitching, at the end of the day, how do you answer questions in exams easily? by knowing what kind of questions can come in the exam. Same thing. I told you I spent 1 year getting rejected by investors before succeeding from investors. So what I did is I almost knew the questions I'm going to get. And like any engineer, I was just doing a question answer formatting and seeing what are the common points I need to answer to everyone. And when I was pitching, how can I tackle all the questions and how can I have all the answers? So, that has to come with experience. That's why experience has value. So when you're first pitching for your idea, you're going to get a lot of questions. But if you truly have the excitement in the other person to do it, it's going to happen in 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from a first-year student of instrumentation and electronics engineering. Like, how should I deal with my career? Focus on placement by Muhsin Mansoor.
How should I deal with my career? With focus on placement.
And focus on placement.
I didn't quite understand the question. Could you elaborate? Could you explain to me a bit, Sushi?
Basically, he wants to know like how he can, what are the things he should do in his career kind of at this point. And he's a first-year student.
I would say enjoy life. That's all you need to do in life. In my first year, I did nothing. So I'm not the right person to tell you.
So how was your college life, Rajitda?
My college life was pretty, I would say, spread out across a lot of things. I used to be a part of a lot of clubs and societies. I used to hardly enter college. I used to be in college always, but I used to hardly enter classes. I still remember, my teachers would reprimand me. Hello? I'm audible, right?
Yes.
So, college life was pretty smooth, in fact, and I used to hardly enter college. I spent a lot of time doing extracurricular activities, talking to people, understanding people. And if I have to tell you one thing I learned out of college, the most important thing, in fact, from my learning was that, I spoke to a lot of people. Just by talking to a lot of people, I understood a lot of perspectives. It's broadened my idea of the world. And the only way it happened is because I met a lot of people from various backgrounds. And Jadavpur gives the opportunity to actually meet a lot of people. So I spent my time, a great part of the time I spent in JU. I think it's quite inactive, but during my time we started something called the JU Journal, and there we did a lot of activities here and there. We did a lot of festivals throughout all the 3 departments of Jadavpur. Arts, engineering, science. We brought together. I was a part of JUP, JU Photo Festival. I was a part of JU Debating Society. So I've had my fair share of time across these departments. So my primary time in college was mostly in the fields and mostly in AC canteen.
Yeah. I would like to ask you, Rajita, how can someone just start to learn about data science? What is the first step that they should take?
The first step that people should take to learn data science is to understand why data science exists. And the only way you should learn why data science exists is to understand the business's problems that can be solved. So what's called an exploratory data analysis, the EDA, is the first step to data science. And you're going to find a lot of stuff on that. So the first step to data science is to actually understand whether you should have a pie chart or a bar graph. That's the first question I ask anyone who's in getting into data science. So, data science, before you even get into ML, the first step is you should have a very good background of numbers, charts, illustrations. You should love numbers. You should be able to storytell using numbers. You should be able to solve problems using numbers. That's more important when you enter data science. Spend your time learning what is called EDA. Read up a lot of materials on that internet. There's a lot of material. Spend your time on that before you even move on to courses.
So I would like to ask another question to this related to this topic is it better to start reading a book on data science or do like various courses which are available in platforms like Coursera, Udemy and other platforms?
I can't endorse anything, but I think it's more important to work in data science. That's what I would do it, because theoretical knowledge of data science is very different from practical knowledge. And I've seen I worked with a lot of students. I've held 3 workshops back in when I was in college across Jadavpur, Shibpur, Xavier's, IIT Kharagpur. What I've understood primarily is that the theoretical knowledge is very different from practical knowledge. I'm someone who learned data science from my first internship at the end of my second year when I was working on data analytics with a company. That I knew nothing, I just knew Python. That's all I knew. And I was working on something called NLP, which I didn't even know. So I went in, I actually understood. So I was given a project where I was told to, build a recommendation engine, and I didn't even know what recommendation engine was. When I was learning upon it, I actually came across things like NLP, bag of words, and stuff, and that was my introductory course. So that's when I knew that how to look at theory and how to implement them. So my recommendation would be the same thing: that go and work, and then go back to theory when you have a problem to solve. Don't start with theory.
Thank you, sir. Like we have another question from Shejuti Karmakars asking, like, so you started approaching the investors from the age of 19 to 20. That's very early. What motivated you to start, and who guided you from the start?
So I think one of the reasons what empowered me to start up, and even before starting up, I told you about those 2 internships that was happening. And what happened during then was I was working with a company. And when I was doing my second year internship with them, and then I continued. And this company was set up by Jasdal's ex-CTO, and he was leading this company. And he was someone who was my guide, my mentor for the first lot of time for the next 1.5 years. And what I understood working with startups in Bangalore, and when I came back, I set up the Kolkata office of the entire startup. I did recruitment in JU for that company for Shipur. What I realized working with startups is, how life is with startups, how exciting it is, how fun it is, how challenging it is. And I think the exposure to startups, to startup life, was what inspired me, or what encouraged me, or what mentored me. So I think that time that I spent working with startups, and actually from that internship to actually full time working with them, even when I was in college, I didn't go to class, so I used to go to their office, and we set up the Calcutta office, and we did a lot of things. So that 1.5 years of time that I spent working on a startup and working with this, and I was directly working with the CEO of the company there, who was the ex-Jasdal CTO, and that was my main learning point. That was when I realized how investments work, how startups work, how things work. And post that, I think it has been a knowledge that just escalated on an exponential curve, because what happens is when you're meeting a lot of people, and I keep on emphasizing meeting a lot of people, because you learn a lot from people. You spend your time talking to people, you spend your time learning from them. Now there are so many digital avenues to actually interact with people and learn from them. And what happens is that from their experiences, from their mistakes, from their learnings, I learned. So my interest, I was always primarily good in selling things, in the terms of I used to handle press, a lot of sponsorships for college festivals in Jadavpur. And that helped me, actually understanding how to sell things to people. And when I eventually moved forward with the tech knowledge, when I started working with startups, I realized how it's about solving problems and then selling what you're solving. And I think that was the gradual transition. But I'll give the credit of actually being able to start up to that 1 year of working with that company and with that person who actually helped me understand the ecosystem very well. And later on, I think it was a knowledge where everyone contributed to it.
Thank you, sir. That tells us to go for internships in startups and
I
not
would
for big companies.
I would highly recommend that. And why I say that is because I already see that culture in IITs developing. Jadavpur needs to do that too. And especially with the COVID situation now, things are changing rapidly. If you look at last 1 year of funding that has happened, startups are right now scaling. Today, the Indian cricket team is sponsored by Cred, is sponsored by Byju's. They're all startups. Sahara is not sponsoring India anymore. There are not hardly, so that talks about the startup ecosystem. The Indian cricket team is the highest level of advertisement, right? So
Yes,
if,
sir.
if they have that marketing budget, then imagine how things are changing. So students need to think of it. They need to think that how can I work with startups more, because I want to learn more and I want to grow more. Because in an MNC, there's only one point you can understand and learn.
So I would like to ask, like, what are the challenges that a startup need, have to face in India, especially in India?
See, the most difficult part of India is that people don't want to pay for technology. And why is that? Is because we have just overcome an IT revolution. Just, I would say, even when we are having this wonderful conference in Google Meet, how many of us really have that kind of internet at home?
Yeah.
Probably people who are living in cities can afford that. But how much of internet connection is good everywhere, right? Even in Jadavpur, and especially people, students from Jadavpur should be able to relate to that, right? How we have our own, there's a lot of people who are coming from rural backgrounds who there is no infrastructure there. So my point there is that uh, IT revolution has just happened in India, and it's too easy. And if you think of it, the MNCs in the world, expecting them to pay for data science or AI or robotics solutions are probably not the easiest thing. So getting funding is not difficult in India. There's a lot of funds there, but getting your client is very important in India, and that's difficult. So selling, people paying for your technology who are building, is difficult in India. B2B technology, B2B space is difficult. So that's why we see most of the B2B companies actually moving out to US, UK, where companies pay more to these tech companies. So that's a one bit of challenge that I see. The second challenge that I mean, there's a lot of positive factors we should also highlight, is that the market is much bigger than the international market. The second challenge I would say is there's still not enough relaxations in terms of actually setting up a company. If today, Shore, seriously, you guys actually want to start up a company and you want to open a private limited, you don't know how to do it. And it's not an easy process. So I think that's another challenge. The entire opening up of startups and the entire thing should happen be more flexible. We need to be understanding more. So that will encourage more people to actually enter the space. Because we spent a lot of time actually learning regulations, and even till date, we learn every day. We have a call, kya regulation hai, we forget, iska kya fine hai, what to do there, what to do, not do there. That's something we have to constantly learn. So, those regulations are a burden, and I would say selling technology is not that easy in India.
Thank you, sir. We have another question by Vibhor Goswami. What are the ways to get a summer project get a project in summer? Is it possible to have?
Sorry, summer project in?
What are the ways to get a project in summer? Is it possible to have?
Could you elaborate on what the question means?
Basically, he wants to ask how to get a project, for especially for first year students or second year students who are basically new to this field of engineering. It's very difficult to get a project, like how to go and where to go
So
and
what I
to whom
think,
to go and approach.
right. So what I think you should do is when you're applying to a company. So let me break it into two parts. Either you're applying for an internship to a company, or you're applying for a master's or to a professor, right? So when applying for an academic project, it's very important to understand what the field of research of that professor is in, and then is it relevant to you. When you're applying for a company, it's also very important to understand what is that company doing, what are they looking for, and am I relevant to you. Remember, every company is willing to give you an internship provided you contribute back to that company. So I think even if you're in first year or second year today, I think we are beyond that time of first year, second year, third year, fourth year, because either way, you're not going to learn anything in either of their years which are relevant to probably what you're going to do. And you're going to learn a lot from internet, from online stuff, from doing things. So I feel you should do your research as to why you're applying to where, and you should be very candid on your interviews and stuff on what you want to learn and how you can contribute back. Don't lie on resumes. Be very blatant about who you are, because I think if you're lying on resumes, that's a direct no. That's what I have learned from working and if you're rather honest, and if you're rather saying, hey, this is what I can do, but this is what I can try to do, that's better than pretending to do something that you actually cannot do. That's my take.
Yes, so we do face people we have seen as batchmates, and most of the seniors tell, yeah, ye to resume mein likh do, recruiter won't even ask about it.
But the challenge is if they ask,
If
and
they
if
ask.
you can't, that's the worst part.
Thank you, sir. There is another question. Is often we need DL models in data science tasks. So with Python library, should be both learning TensorFlow or Keras or PyTorch? It has been asked by Rajdeep.
So basically, these are Python modules that are used, and they all have APIs inbuilt into Python, which you can use. So it's not like you need to divert from Python to use these stuff. They have their independent functioning. At the same time, they have APIs integrated into your Python. So even if you know just Python, you can actually learn about these and implement them in a model. I would say DL or deep learning is something which is very high functioning in the sense that there's a lot of computational and GPU computation that is needed. So I think it's a deep research field, and knowing Python to start off with is okay, and moving forward is okay. But what you should be concerned more is, do I know the mathematics of the model that I'm implementing? For in ML, today it's as simple as, or in DL, it's as simple as to just copy paste a line of code from Stack Overflow and run my program and say I'm a DL engineer or an ML engineer. But do I actually understand what's getting implemented? The maths behind it is more important. So spend your time more important on the code, not the code implementation, but rather on the mathematical implementation of ML and AI.
So, sir, what would be your advice for the first and the second year students, especially for the first and second year students?
So for the first and second year students, what I would say is you're entering a world which has no precedence. You should not be following what your seniors did or anyone did, because you're entering a world that we don't know about. You should follow, you have actually in a very challenging time, because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. Will you actually ever go to office, or will you always work from home? I see a lot of MNCs applying permanent work from homes. I don't know about the Jadavpur placement situation this year, but placement scenarios across has been affected because companies are suddenly realizing, do I really need to hire a lot of these roles? Because managerial roles are going down, a lot of things is happening. So the world is changing, and it's very difficult. Nobody can predict what's going to happen. But what's important is you are always at your best, so that you can always cater to what's happening. So as a first or second year old student, I think this is the perfect time to do experiments. When I say experiments, go and, even if you have college, if I was going to go back to my first year, I would probably start working from my first year. Because, even if you are in college, even if you have classes, now you're sitting at home. Spend your time virtually working for companies. There's a beautiful time now to actually, you can work with companies even if you're in college, because you can do classes online, you can work parallelly in the background. So spend your time on internet, do research, do projects, do work with companies. I would say start working. Don't keep on learning, because learning is the best way to learn is to work. So keep doing that. That's my take on it. Again, a very personal biased opinion, but if you ask me, I would say start working.
Yes, sir. I would like really agree to what you said, because I too feel like one learns best when they apply the knowledge they have gained, because they get to learn a lot of things while they're working, some new things, and sometimes they learn like, no, they have learned this wrong way, and the application in the real world and the knowledge and the application in the real world varies, like it's huge. It varies hugely. So there is another question by Shenjuti Kormukash is asking that, so why did you build your startup in Kolkata and not in big cities like Bangalore?
Again, a very interesting question, and I think I keep on getting asked that by my investors, that, hey, why are you not still shifting to Mumbai? Because very sadly, I have no client in Kolkata, and all my clients are Mumbai based. 90% are Mumbai based, 10% is Bangalore. And primarily that's also because I work in a pharma and healthcare. My clients are mostly from there, pharma, healthcare, retail. So that's mostly fintech, that's mostly Mumbai based. Why I did not shift out of Calcutta? There are two reasons why, and probably I'm not going to shift out. We're going to open a business. So I told my investors I'm going to open a business office in Mumbai and Bangalore, but I'm not going to shift out, because what happens is, we have this culture, and I think all of you have seen that already, that we have this culture of dissing Kolkata. We have this culture of saying that Kolkata kichu hoy na, right? That's the trend that we follow. Why do we have no clients in Kolkata? That's important to understand, because nobody is kind of keeping the kind of traction in Kolkata, in terms of there's not enough companies in Kolkata who can actually pay you for what you're doing. But at the same time, Bangalore has a lot of competition in terms of employees. If you have an employee in Bangalore, probably tomorrow the employee is going to go to some other company. You have that concern. In Calcutta, you don't have that concern. When you're opening a startup, economics is very important. So my cost of living, my cost of renting, my cost of my employees were far less in Calcutta. So it was not just an emotional decision, it was also a business decision to not shift out of Calcutta. As long as I was booking my own flights to meet clients in Mumbai and Bangalore, I'm mostly Mumbai based. I spent 3 out of my 4 weeks in month in Mumbai talking to clients. But pre-COVID, post-COVID, things are different. But now what's happening is that, I actually didn't need my entire team to be shifted there, right? So I feel I feel a lot of Bengalis, especially, who are getting into entrepreneurship should maintain their focus in Calcutta. And I'll tell you, a lot of my clients actually love the fact that we are out of Calcutta. A lot of Bengalis that we interact in terms of all our fields, not just Bengalis, ex-Kolkata people, who are there, people passing out of JU, they love the fact that a Calcutta startup is coming up. And I would also love the fact if I can help a fellow Calcutta startup. So I feel that identity of that city is very important. And if we're building something, we should always give back to where we started from. So, I owe Jadavpur, I owe Calcutta the same way. And we should always give back. So, and also economics, as I said, that economics is sustainable here. So I feel that, blaming governments are very easy. I'm not going to get into the government thing that what's wrong or what's right. But as far as what I could do for myself, or, as someone who is from Calcutta, is at least I would want that credit of whatever we achieve as a team from Calcutta goes back to a startup from Calcutta. When we raised our funding from Indian Angel Network, the headlines, we had two options. One was DataSutra raises X amount from Indian Angel Network. The second was Kolkata tech startup DataSutra. I chose the second one. So I'm a bit personal. I'm a bit Kolkata lover, and I want to be out of here because I owe this city, and I feel whatever we are building, we will give a part of that credit to this city, and we need to stay here. And economics favor that.
Thank you, sir. That was really inspiring to hear from you. We have another question by Tonma Shorkar saying that if I am from first year and get chance to work with a startup, should I go with that or only focus on academics?
I think anyone can guess my answer by now. Go and work.
There is another question by Anshuman Chaudhuri saying that what are some industries which are likely to be going to embrace data science in the next 5 years?
That's a very intelligent question to ask. And why I would say is because that probably defines what kind of products you should be building if you're wanting to go into entrepreneurship. So I'll be very careful when I answer that. One of the areas that's very emerging, it's hot, and I feel it's something where data science is going to play soon, is edtech. Education, technology, the way we are experiencing education is revolutionizing. It's changing rapidly. Today, suddenly you're realizing that the structure of education was something that was very preemptive. If you look at how COVID impacted things, there are two things that got impacted. One was healthcare and one was education. Everything else took less turns, but these two sectors took the most turn. And if you think of it, these are the two areas. Education primarily is an area which didn't have any innovation. The same way we are learning today is the same way our fathers or mothers used to learn, the same way our grandparents used to learn, the same way our great-grandparents used to learn. Since the time Jadavpur was established, probably the same way of teaching is happening. So, education as a system was challenged, and, a lot of money is flowing into edtech because suddenly we realize the concept of, suddenly, again, coming back to my point, it's not just about giving internet. It's about actually ensuring everyone gets access to that internet. That's also a part of edtech. So huge part of data science, and especially with Geo rolling out 5G here and there, what's going to happen is resource development, edtech, planning, internet implementation is going to be one of the key focus areas of why data science is going to come in. And why? Because optimization of this is very important. Anywhere where optimization is important, data science comes in. Because that's the fundamental part of how you optimize, how you cater and lower down. So I feel data science is going to be important in any sector going forward. One of the next sectors I've talked about is energy. Huge implementation in energy that is going to come in form of data science. India is still not seeing it, but we have clients in UK who are already working on how renewable and how data science is going to control which areas are still not adapting well to renewable energy. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the space, energy sector, ed tech, in my opinion, resource development, structural development, government. There's going to be a huge scope of data science in all of these fields. And I feel there's a huge market for this. Even if you're really into automobiles, I don't know how many mechanical people there are, but EV is something that's really shaping up a lot. And there's going to be a lot of data science into that. So these are, in my opinion, some of the key areas.
Thank you, sir. There's another question, like by Bika Shah, is asking how can an introvert become a good entrepreneur?
Who is this person?
Bika Shah.
So, Geeta, right?
Bikash.
Bikash. So Bikash, I was reading a book that day, which was written, I forgot the name, but it was written by employee of Instagram about, Instagram's founder being a perfect blend of an introvert and an extrovert to become an entrepreneur. So I understand it's a very interesting part why you asked that question, and I relate to the line I read. So being an introvert actually helps you empathize with a problem, helps you understand a problem, helps you really deep dive into it. Being an extrovert actually helps you sell what you're doing. So I feel even if you're an introvert or an extrovert doesn't define whether you can be an entrepreneur or not. It honestly doesn't to that extent. I don't particularly know if there's a fine line between an introvert and an extrovert, but I think if you shift a bit towards that, if you try to start talking about what you're doing, see, introverts are people who just, in my opinion, introverts are people who just don't like to waste their time doing, things that they don't like. But hey, if you waste your time talking to people about things you like, why can't an introvert do that? So being an introvert doesn't stop you from becoming an entrepreneur. In fact, you have a higher probability in terms of, because you have that depth in something, you can spend your alone time, because being an entrepreneur is very hard. You need to spend your time thinking a lot about the product, and this can help you.
So, sir, thank you. One last question. You have been member of lot of clubs while you were in JU. How does it feel back to be on that side of the camera and conducting a seminar for JUSC?
I think it was a pleasure. I really thank all of you guys for putting up this beautiful event where we could interact with students, and it was always great to come back here to Jadavpur. And I was particularly excited for this because I have organized a lot of events as a part of Jadavpur. I've spoken to alumni, and as actually being on the other side, it's pretty interesting. And I would say, feel free to reach out to me, I would be more than happy to help you guys in any form I can, but continue what you're doing. And I think you should every week ensure there is someone or the other who's coming up, and someone who's an alumni doing something beautiful, something interesting in some areas. And I think this actually can be an interesting platform for you to give that kind of exposure to your students. I think in Jadavpur what we the most learn is how to be self-reliant. How can each of us actually be conducting something for ourselves. So I'll say that's a wonderful initiative you guys are doing at JUSC. Thanks for having me here, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys in any way I can.
Thank you, sir. It was an honor for us to have you with us. Your words were truly inspiring. On behalf of Jadavpur University Science Club, I would like to wish you a very best of luck for your future endeavors and hope to see Data Sutram flourish more. Thank you, sir. Also, we will be coming
Thank you.
to chapter 3 of Stroke of Insight really soon. Please subscribe this channel, like this video, and also go and follow all our social media pages. Thank you.
Done to.